Layla Hassan had learned early in her career that being fluent in Arabic was both an asset and a liability. An asset because she could understand conversations others couldn't. A liability because admitting it meant dealing with assumptions, stereotypes, and the exhausting question, "But where are you really from?" So she kept it hidden. Let people see her as just another American waitress at Marceau, an upscale French restaurant in Manhattan where the clientele paid more for a single meal than most people made in a week. She smiled, took orders, and pretended not to understand when wealthy Middle Eastern businessmen made comments in Arabic about the service, the food, or occasionally about her. Tonight was no different. Except for the man at table 7, Sheikh Rashid al-Mazrui commanded attention without effort. Tall, impeccably dressed in a custom suit that probably cost more than Layla's car, with sharp features and darker eyes that assessed everything with calculation. He'd arrived with an entourage of 6 business associates, a translator, and what looked like security pretending to be dinner guests. Layla approached with water and menus, her professional smile firmly in place. "Good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to Marceau. Can I start you with something to drink?" Rashid barely glanced at her, accepting his menu without acknowledgement. His companions followed his lead, treating her like animated furniture. She was used to it. Wealthy men often didn't see service staff as fully human. As she recited the specials, Rashid interrupted in flawless English. "We'll need time to decide. Bring champagne. Dom Pérignon. The 2008 vintage, of course. I'll be right back with your champagne." As Layla walked away, she heard Rashid switch to Arabic, his voice carrying that particular tone of someone who assumed no one nearby could understand him. "The service here is slow. Typical Americans. No sense of urgency or respect." One of his companions laughed. "At least the waitress is pleasant to look at, even if she's clueless." "Pleasant, but simple," Rashid agreed dismissively. "These American women have no grace, no understanding of proper hospitality. They smile and expect tips for doing the bare minimum." Layla's hands tightened on her order pad. She'd heard worse over the years. Had developed thick skin against casual degradation in languages people assumed she didn't speak. But something about Rashid's arrogance, his casual contempt, made her reconsider her usual policy of silence. She returned with the champagne, going through the ritual of presenting the bottle, opening it with practiced efficiency, and pouring exactly the right amount into each flute. As she finished, Rashid said something else in Arabic that made his companions laugh. "I wonder if she even knows what Dom Pérignon is. Probably thinks all champagne is the same." That did it. Layla set down the bottle with controlled precision and responded in perfect, formal Arabic, the kind learned from educated native speakers, not from apps or classroom instruction. "Dom Pérignon is a vintage champagne produced by Moet et Chandon. The 2008 vintage you ordered is particularly excellent due to ideal growing conditions that year. And for your information, good hospitality requires respect from both the server and the served. A concept that seems lost on some people, regardless of how expensive their suits are." The table went absolutely silent. 7 men stared at her with expressions ranging from shock to horror. Rashid's face was frozen, his champagne flute halfway to his lips. His eyes suddenly locked on Layla with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. She continued in Arabic, her tone scrupulously polite but pointed. "I apologize if my simple American service has been inadequate. Perhaps in the future you might consider that making assumptions about people based on their job is both rude and often incorrect." "Enjoy your champagne." Layla turned and walked away with her head high, her heart hammering. She'd just verbally demolished a table of wealthy businessmen in their own language, in front of their host, while working a job she desperately needed to pay rent. She was definitely getting fired. Her manager, Antoine, intercepted her at the service station. "Layla, what did you say to table 7? That man is Sheikh Rashid al-Mazrui. He's one of the wealthiest men in the United Arab Emirates. He could buy this restaurant as a tip." "You cannot offend him. He was being rude. In Arabic. He assumed I didn't understand. So you called him out? In front of his business associates?" Antoine looked torn between admiration and panic. "Layla, this could be a disaster. Or it could be interesting. He's asked to speak with you. He wants to complain? I don't know what he wants. But you're going to find out. Try not to get us all fired." Layla approached table 7 with trepidation. Rashid was watching her, his expression unreadable. When she reached the table, he stood, a gesture of respect that surprised her, and gestured to an empty chair. "Please, Sit. I'm working. I'm asking you to sit. Please. His English was impeccable, but Layla heard the undercurrent of command. This was a man used to being obeyed. She sat, very aware that every eye in the restaurant was on them. Rashid studied her with disconcerting intensity, then spoke in Arabic. Your accent. Lebanese, Syrian. Lebanese. My father is from Beirut. My mother is American. Layla kept her voice neutral. And you learned Arabic from your father? From my father, my grandfather, and 3 years living in Lebanon during middle school. I'm fluent in modern standard Arabic and the Lebanese dialect. Also conversational in Egyptian Arabic and Gulf Arabic, though my Gulf dialect is weaker. One of Rashid's companions whistled softly. That's impressive linguistic range. Thank you. Layla looked directly at Rashid. Though I'm sure you didn't ask me to sit down to discuss my language education. If you're going to complain to my manager, can we get it over with? I have other tables. I'm not complaining. I'm apologizing. Rashid's voice was formal, serious. What I said was inexcusable. I made assumptions based on appearance and profession. You were right to call me out, even if it was unexpected. Unexpected that I speak Arabic or unexpected that I have dignity. Both, if I'm being honest. American service staff usually tolerate rudeness for the sake of tips. You chose honesty over financial gain. That's rare. Maybe I decided self-respect was worth more than your money. Rashid's lips twitched with something that might have been amusement. You're very direct. That's also unusual. I'm American. We tend toward directness. I thought you'd have figured that out by now, given your low opinion of us. Layla stood. If we're done here, I have work to do. Wait, please. Rashid pulled out a business card. I have a proposal. I'm in New York for business negotiations. Important negotiations with American partners. My translator is competent but lacks cultural nuance. I need someone who understands both Arabic culture and American business practices. Someone who can bridge not just language but context. Layla stared at the card. Sheikh Rashid Al-Mazrui, CEO, Al-Mazrui Energy Holdings. An address in Dubai. You want to hire me as a translator based on one conversation where I insulted you? You didn't insult me. You held me accountable. There's a difference. Rashid's expression was serious. Miss Hassan, I assume that's your name from your name tag. I've been dealing with American business partners for 10 years. I've had dozens of translators. None of them have been brave enough to tell me when I'm being an ass. That quality is worth more than perfect grammar. I'm a waitress. I'm not qualified to be a business translator. What's your education? Layla hesitated. Master's in Political Science from Georgetown. Focus on Middle Eastern studies and international relations. And you're serving tables because academic jobs are scarce, and being named Layla Hassan means HR departments make assumptions about whether you're culturally compatible with their organizations. Serving tables pays the bills while I figure out what's next. Rashid's jaw tightened. That's discrimination. That's reality. Your country isn't the only place where names carry weight. Fair point. Rashid wrote something on the back of his business card. This is what I'm offering. $10,000 for 3 days of translation work. Business meetings, dinners, possibly some contract review if your written Arabic is strong. You'll be compensated for your time and expertise appropriately. Layla looked at the number he'd written. $10,000. That was 3 months of rent. Student loan payments. Breathing room she desperately needed. It was also working for a man who'd casually insulted her competence and heritage minutes ago. Why should I trust you? You think American women are simple and graceless. Why would you want one representing you in business negotiations? Because you just proved that my assumptions were wrong. And because someone who'll challenge me in the middle of a restaurant will challenge my business partners when they're trying to take advantage. That's valuable. Rashid met her eyes directly. I'm offering you an opportunity to use your education and skills at a compensation level that reflects their worth. You can say no. Continue serving tables to men who probably don't tip as well as they should. Or you can take a chance that maybe I'm capable of learning from my mistakes. Layla thought about her master's degree gathering dust. About another night of serving overpriced food to people who looked through her. About the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this arrogant sheikh was offering something that could change her trajectory. I want a contract, in writing, specifying exactly what's expected, hours, compensation, and a clear termination clause if either party is unsatisfied. No handshake deals. Of course, I'll have my lawyer draft something tonight. You can review it with your own lawyer before signing. I don't have a lawyer. Then I'll pay for you to consult one. This needs to be legitimate and professional. Rashid stood, extending his hand. Do we have an agreement in principle? Layla shook his hand, his grip firm and warm. In principle. Pending contract review. And Sheikh Al-Mazrui, if you insult me or anyone else in Arabic again, I'll translate it for everyone in the room. Just so we're clear. Noted. And Miss Hassan, thank you for the honesty and the Arabic lesson. I needed both. After Rashid and his group left, with an obscenely large tip that probably covered her rent, Layla stood in the back hallway and wondered what she'd just agreed to. 3 days working for a man who embodied everything that frustrated her about wealthy Middle Eastern businessmen, the arrogance, the assumptions, the casual disrespect for anyone they deemed beneath them. But he'd apologized. Actually apologized. Not the fake kind people gave when caught. And he'd offered her $10,000 to use skills she'd spent years developing and months pretending she didn't have. Her phone buzzed. An email from an unfamiliar address containing a draft contract. She skimmed it quickly. Everything he'd promised was there. $10,000 for 3 days of translation services, specific hours, clear deliverables, termination clauses that protected both parties. Professional, thorough, legitimate. At the bottom, a note in English. Have your lawyer review this. If you don't have one, I've arranged for Sarah Chen at Morrison & Associates to consult with you at my expense. She's expecting your call. Our Layla sat in the break room, contract on her phone, and tried to decide if she was being offered an opportunity or walking into a disaster. Working for Rashid meant entering a world she'd spent years avoiding. Meant claiming her Arab heritage publicly instead of keeping it carefully hidden. Meant risking that he'd turn out to be exactly the arrogant ass he'd seemed at first, despite his apology. But it also meant using her skills, being compensated fairly. Maybe, possibly finding a path forward that didn't involve hiding who she was or what she could do. She called Sarah Chen, had the contract reviewed, made 2 small modifications that were accepted immediately, and signed her name to an agreement that felt both terrifying and exhilarating. 3 days working for Sheikh Rashid Al-Mazrui. What could possibly go wrong? The first meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. at the Peninsula Hotel, where Rashid had apparently rented an entire floor for his delegation. Layla arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in her most professional outfit, a navy suit that had cost her a month of tips and made her look like she belonged in boardrooms instead of dining rooms. The lobby was full of men in expensive suits speaking a mixture of Arabic and English. Layla approached the concierge, gave her name, and was immediately escorted to a private conference room on the 20th floor. Rashid was already there, standing at the window overlooking Fifth Avenue, speaking rapidly in Arabic on his phone. When he saw Layla, he wrapped up the call and turned to face her. Miss Hassan, thank you for coming. You look very professional. You sound surprised. Not surprised. Pleased. Coffee? He gestured to an elaborate spread on the sideboard. Arabic coffee in traditional dalla pots alongside American coffee, and an array of pastries that looked like they'd been flown in from somewhere exotic. Arabic coffee, please. No sugar. Layla accepted the small cup, noting that Rashid poured it himself rather than having staff do it. A gesture of respect in Arab culture, serving your guest personally. Your Arabic is truly excellent, Rashid said, switching to Arabic. Where did you study formally? American University of Beirut for a semester. Then private tutoring with a professor from Damascus. My father insisted I learn properly, not just conversational Arabic, but classical literature, poetry, formal discourse. Layla sipped her coffee. He said if I was going to carry his name, I needed to honor his language. Your father is a wise man. Does he know you're hiding your skills by serving tables? My father died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Layla kept her voice steady. He would have been disappointed that I'm not using my education. But he'd understand that surviving sometimes means compromising. I'm sorry for your loss. Rashid's sympathy sounded genuine. And I'm sorry you've had to hide such valuable skills. That ends today. For the next 3 days, you're not a waitress. You're a cultural liaison and translator. You speak with my authority in these meetings. That's a lot of authority to give someone you met yesterday. You've already proven you'll tell me the truth even when it's uncomfortable. That's worth more than years of experience. Rashid pulled out a folder. Today's meeting is with Whitmore Energy, an American oil company. They want to partner with us on drilling operations in the Gulf. Standard negotiation, or so they think. But I suspect they're underestimating us. Americans often do with Middle Eastern partners. They assume we're less sophisticated, that we'll be dazzled by their technology and miss problematic contract terms. Rashid's smile was sharp. I need you to listen for assumptions, condescension, anything that suggests they're not negotiating in good faith. Your job isn't just translation. It's cultural interpretation. You want me to tell you when they're being patronizing? Exactly. Americans are usually too polite to be obviously rude, but subtle disrespect is still disrespect. I need someone who understands both cultures well enough to catch it. The Whitmore Energy team arrived at exactly 9:30. 5 people, 3 men in their 50s, clearly executives, 1 woman who looked like a lawyer, and a younger man introduced as their technical specialist. They greeted Rashid with the careful courtesy of people who'd read cultural briefings but didn't truly understand the culture. Sheikh al-Mazrui, thank you for meeting with us, the lead executive James Whitmore said. He spoke slowly, enunciating carefully like Rashid might not understand English. We're very excited about the potential partnership, Rashid responded in perfect English. As am I. Please sit. This is Miss Layla Hassan, my cultural liaison and translator. She'll be facilitating our communication. Layla caught the slight surprise on the Whitmore team's faces. They'd expected a man, probably, or someone who looked more traditionally Middle Eastern. She smiled professionally and took her seat beside Rashid. The presentation began. Whitmore Energy had prepared elaborate slides about their drilling technology, their safety record, their experience in challenging environments. It was impressive, clearly designed to overwhelm and impress. Halfway through, one of the executives turned to Layla and asked in slow, loud English, "Does the sheikh understand the technical specifications, or should we simplify?" Before Layla could respond, Rashid answered smoothly in Arabic, his tone pleasant. Please tell Mr. Collins that I have a degree in petroleum engineering from Imperial College London and have been managing drilling operations for 15 years. I understand the specifications perfectly well. Layla translated into English, keeping her tone equally pleasant. Sheikh al-Mazrui wants you to know he has extensive technical education and experience. He understands your presentation completely. Collins flushed. Of course, I apologize. I didn't mean to suggest. Of course you didn't, Layla said smoothly. Let's continue. But she'd caught what Rashid wanted her to see. The assumption that a Middle Eastern businessman wouldn't understand complex engineering. The casual condescension wrapped in politeness. When they reached the contract terms, the real issues emerged. Whitmore wanted majority control of operations, 60-40 split favoring them. They wanted their technology proprietary with no knowledge transfer to Rashid's company. And they wanted a clause that gave them unilateral decision-making on safety protocols. Rashid listened impassively as the terms were presented, then spoke in Arabic. Ask them if they would accept these terms if the situation were reversed. If I demanded 60% control of their operations, proprietary access to their technology, and unilateral safety decisions, Layla translated, watching the Whitmore team exchange uncomfortable glances. That's different, James Whitmore said carefully. We have the established technology, the proven track record. We're bringing expertise to the partnership, and Sheikh al-Mazrui is bringing access to drilling rights worth billions of dollars, existing infrastructure, and relationships with regional governments that would take you decades to develop, Layla countered. Expertise flows both ways. A true partnership requires mutual respect, not one party assuming dominance. The room went quiet. Layla had gone beyond simple translation into active negotiation. Rashid's expression remained neutral, but she saw approval in his eyes. Miss Hassan makes an excellent point, Rashid said in English, taking control of the conversation. I appreciate your technology, but I'm not a junior partner in my own country. If Whitmore Energy wants this partnership, we negotiate as equals. 50-50 split, mutual technology sharing, joint decision-making on all major operations. Otherwise, I'll find partners who understand the value of reciprocity. The negotiation continued for 3 more hours. Layla translated, clarified cultural context, and occasionally stepped in to reframe American directness into something less abrasive for Rashid, or to explain why certain Arabic phrases had implications the Whitmore team was missing. By the end, they had the framework for a real partnership, equal split, genuine collaboration, mutual respect built into the contract terms. After the Whitmore team left, Rashid poured them both Arabic coffee, his expression thoughtful. You went beyond translation. You negotiated on my behalf. Was that wrong? You said I spoke with your authority. It was perfect. You understood exactly what I needed and delivered it without being told. That's rare. Rashid raised his cup in a small toast. Thank you. That was worth far more than $10,000. I'm still getting the $10,000, right? You're getting the $10,000 and a bonus, and quite possibly a permanent job offer if you're interested. Layla set down her cup. Rashid, Sheikh Al-Mazrui, I appreciate the offer, but I need to be clear about something. I'm not interested in being someone's token Arab American. I won't be the diversity hire you trot out to prove you're culturally sensitive. Is that what you think this is? I think you're a smart businessman who recognized an asset. But I need to know if you're offering me a job because I'm actually good at this, or because having someone who looks American but speaks Arabic is convenient for your image. Rashid stood, walking to the window. Fair question. Honest answer. Both. You're exceptionally good at this. Your linguistic skills are excellent, but your cultural interpretation is what makes you valuable. You see what people mean, not just what they say. That's rare and incredibly useful. But yes, having someone who bridges American and Arab cultures is also strategically valuable. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. At least you're honest. You've proven that dishonesty with you is pointless. You see through it too easily. Rashid turned back to face her. Layla, I'm offering you a real position. Cultural advisor and senior translator. You'd work directly with me on international negotiations. Base salary of $300,000, plus bonuses for successful deals. Full benefits, and real decision-making authority, not just translation. Layla's breath caught. $300,000. That was life-changing money. That was paying off loans, helping her mother, security she'd never imagined. That's too much. For 3 days of work. For 3 days of work that probably just saved me from a terrible contract and has the Whitmore people actually respecting me as an equal partner. That's nothing. Rashid's voice was firm. You're worth that salary. Stop undervaluing yourself because you've been forced to hide your skills. I need to think about it. This is a huge decision. Of course, take time. But Layla, consider this. You've spent years hiding who you are and what you can do. This is a chance to stop hiding, to use everything you've learned and be compensated fairly for it. Why would you say no? Because accepting means admitting I'm both things, American and Arab, Western and Middle Eastern, and I've spent my whole life trying to choose one. I'll give you an answer before the 3 days are up. Right now I need to prepare for tonight's dinner meeting. You said there would be more business associates attending. Yes, more traditional than the Whitmore team. They'll expect certain cultural protocols. Rashid pulled out another folder. I took the liberty of having appropriate clothing sent to your apartment. Traditional abaya in modern styles. You don't have to wear it if you're uncomfortable. You sent clothes to my apartment? How do you even know where I live? Your address was on the contract. And yes, I had my assistant handle it. If it's offensive, I apologize. I just thought you might not have appropriate attire for a formal Arab business dinner. Layla didn't know whether to be angry at the presumption or grateful for the consideration. What if I don't want to wear traditional clothing? What if I show up in this suit? Then you show up in the suit and we adapt. Layla, I'm not trying to change you or force you into being someone you're not. I'm offering options. You choose how you present yourself. The clothing arrived at her apartment that afternoon. 3 beautiful abayas in black navy and deep green. Modern cuts, clearly expensive, with subtle embroidery that managed to be both traditional and contemporary. A matching hijab for each, if she chose to wear one. Layla stared at them, her chest tight. She hadn't worn traditional clothing since her father's funeral. Had actively avoided anything that marked her as Arab, as Muslim, as other. Had straightened her naturally curly hair, Americanized her speech. Buried anything that didn't fit the narrow definition of professional American woman. But looking at these beautiful garments, she remembered her father's pride when she'd worn traditional dress for family gatherings. Remembered feeling connected to something larger than herself. Remembered being both things, American and Arab, Western and Middle Eastern, complex and whole. She chose the deep green abaya and matching hijab for dinner. When Layla arrived at the private dining room wearing the green abaya and hijab, Rashid's expression shifted through surprise to something that looked like approval and perhaps relief. You look... He paused, searching for words in English, then switched to Arabic. You look like yourself, completely yourself. It's beautiful. It's just clothes. It's a statement. You're choosing not to hide. Rashid gestured to the dining area where tables were being set for 15 guests. Tonight will be more challenging than this morning. These are investors from Saudi Arabia, UAE, Kuwait. More conservative, more traditional in their expectations of women in business. They may not accept you easily. Should I expect them to ignore me? Address you instead of me? Assume I'm decorative? Possibly all of that. Can you handle it? Layla thought about every patronizing customer who'd dismissed her as just a waitress. Every job interviewer who'd seen her name and made assumptions. Every time she'd been underestimated because of her gender, her heritage, or both. I've been handling it my whole life. The only difference is tonight I'm being paid well for the patience. The investors arrived in a wave of expensive cologne and louder voices. 12 men, ranging from their 40s to 70s, all dressed in traditional Gulf attire, white thobes and gutras. They greeted Rashid with warmth and familiarity, then noticed Layla and went silent. "Gentlemen," Rashid said in Arabic, "this is Miss Layla Hassan, my senior cultural advisor. She'll be joining our discussions tonight." An older man, introduced as Sheikh Abdullah from Saudi Arabia, frowned. "Rashid, surely there are more appropriate settings for female staff. Perhaps she could wait outside while we conduct business." Before Rashid could respond, Layla spoke in formal Arabic, the kind used in serious discourse. "Sheikh Abdullah, with respect, I'm not staff. I'm an advisor. I have a master's degree in Middle Eastern political science from Georgetown and speak 4 dialects of Arabic fluently. I'm here because Sheikh Al-Mazrui values my expertise, not because I'm serving food." The silence was absolute. Several men looked shocked that she'd spoken at all. Others appeared intrigued. Sheikh Abdullah's expression was unreadable. "Georgetown," he finally said. "Impressive. But surely your family objects to you working in such a public role. It's unconventional. My father encouraged me to use my education. He believed that hiding our capabilities dishonors the gifts we're given." Layla kept her voice respectful but firm, and with respect, Sheikh Abdullah, the Prophet's wife Khadija, was a businesswoman who employed her own husband before they married. "There's precedent for women in commerce in our tradition." A younger investor laughed. "She has you there, Abdullah." Khadija was one of the wealthiest merchants in Mecca. Hard to argue with that example. The dinner proceeded with careful formality. Layla noticed patterns quickly. When investors addressed questions to Rashid about American business practices or cultural issues, he deliberately turned to her for answers, making her expertise visible and necessary. When someone tried to exclude her by switching to more colloquial Gulf Arabic, she responded in the same dialect, proving her competence. Halfway through dinner, the conversation shifted to a proposed deal with an American tech company. The investors were excited about the potential, discussing terms in Arabic while the American business partners, invited for dessert and coffee, waited in an adjacent room. "They're desperate for our investment," one investor said confidently in Arabic. "We can demand better terms." "They need our money more than we need their technology." Layla listened carefully, then spoke quietly to Rashid. "The American team isn't desperate. They have 3 other Middle Eastern investment groups interested. This group is assuming dominance without information. That's dangerous. You're certain?" I reviewed the company's investor prospectus. "They're in a strong position. If your investors go in assuming weakness, they'll negotiate poorly and possibly lose the opportunity entirely." Rashid nodded, then addressed the table. "Gentlemen, before we meet with the Americans, Miss Hassan has some insights about their position that we should consider." All eyes turned to Layla. She pulled out her tablet, displaying the research she'd done that afternoon. The company in question has secured interest from at least 3 other investment groups. They're not desperate. They're selective. If we approach this negotiation assuming they need us more than we need them, we'll likely lose the deal to competitors. How do you know they have other investors? Sheikh Abdullah asked skeptically. Because I spent 3 hours researching their financial position, their board meetings minutes, and their public statements to investors. It's publicly available information if you know where to look. Layla showed them the documentation. We should negotiate from a position of mutual interest, not assume dominance. Otherwise, we're just proving American stereotypes about Middle Eastern investors being more ego than strategy. The younger investor who'd laughed earlier grinned. She's right. We were being arrogant. Better to know that now than to embarrass ourselves in the meeting. The negotiation with the American tech company went smoothly, partly because Layla had reset expectations, partly because she caught several cultural misunderstandings before they became problems. When the Americans used casual language that could be interpreted as disrespectful, she reframed it. When the investors made statements that sounded demanding in English translation, she softened them without losing the substance. By the end of the evening, they had a tentative agreement that satisfied both parties. The American team left impressed. The investors left considering Layla with new respect. "That was masterful," Rashid said after everyone had departed. They were alone in the dining room, staff clearing tables around them. "You managed egos on both sides, caught problems before they escalated, and kept everyone focused on mutual benefit rather than winning. That's the job, isn't it? Cultural liaison means making sure people understand each other instead of just hearing words. It's more than that. You have a gift for seeing what people need to hear to actually listen." "That's rare." Rashid poured them both tea from an ornate Arabic tea service. "Have you thought about my offer? 300,000 to do this permanently?" "I have. And I have questions. Ask. Where would I be based? Dubai? Because I'm not moving to the UAE. I have a life here, obligations, my mother. New York. You'd be based here, traveling as needed for negotiations. Maybe 1 week a month abroad, sometimes more during busy periods. But your primary residence would be here. And the nature of the work? Would it always be this? Business negotiations and cultural interpretation? Or would there be other expectations?" Rashid's expression darkened. "If you're asking whether I'm expecting anything beyond professional services, the answer is absolutely not. Layla, I'm offering you a legitimate position because you're exceptionally good at something I need, not because I'm hoping for anything else. I needed to ask. You wouldn't believe how many job offers come with unstated expectations. I believe it completely. And it's disgusting. But I'm not those men. I want your expertise, your honesty, your ability to bridge cultures. That's all." Rashid paused. "Though I should be honest about one thing. Working for me means dealing with conservative business partners who will question your presence, your authority, your right to speak. Tonight was relatively mild. Some investors will be openly hostile to having a woman in business meetings. Can you handle that long term?" Layla thought about her father, who'd insisted she learn Arabic perfectly because our language is beautiful and you should honor it. Thought about her master's degree gathering dust. Thought about serving tables to men who looked through her. I've been handling it my whole life without compensation or acknowledgement. At least in this job I'd be paid well for the patience and I'd be using my actual skills. That's an improvement. So that's a yes? That's a provisional yes. I want a trial period. 3 months. If either of us is unhappy with the arrangement, we part ways professionally with no hard feelings. Done. I'll have contracts drafted tonight. Rashid extended his hand. Welcome to Al Mazrui Energy Holdings, Miss Hassan. Try not to make me look too incompetent in front of my investors. No promises. You pay me to be honest, remember? Over the next 2 days, Layla proved her worth repeatedly. She caught a contract clause that would have cost Rashid millions. She negotiated a partnership with a Texas energy company that initially refused to work with Middle Eastern investors. She diffused tensions when a Saudi investor made comments that offended American partners, translating his intent rather than his exact words, and she realized something important. She was good at this. Not just competent, genuinely talented. The years of hiding her skills, of making herself smaller and less threatening, had been survival. But they'd also been a waste. She could do this work. She could bridge cultures, translate not just language but meaning, help people understand each other across vast differences. On the final day, Rashid invited her to his hotel suite to finalize the employment contract. The space was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows and furniture that probably cost more than Layla made in a year at the restaurant. "This is ready for your signature," Rashid said, handing her a document. "My lawyer's reviewed. Your lawyer reviewed. Everything we discussed is included. 300,000 base salary, performance bonuses, full benefits, 3-month trial period with exit clauses protecting both parties." Layla read through carefully. Everything was exactly as promised. "Transparent, fair, professional. There's one more thing," Rashid said. "I have a project that could use your input. Not required for the job, but I wanted your perspective." "What kind of project?" "I'm establishing a scholarship fund for Arab American students pursuing degrees in international relations, political science, Middle Eastern studies, students who are caught between cultures. who face discrimination based on their names or backgrounds. I want to help them succeed without having to hide who they are. Layla felt her throat tighten. That's really beautiful. It's necessary. You shouldn't have had to serve tables with a Georgetown master's degree. Other students shouldn't have to make that choice either. Rashid pulled out another folder. I'd like you to help design the program. Selection criteria, mentorship components, cultural support. You understand what these students need because you've lived it. Rashid, why are you doing this? The job, the scholarship, all of it. You don't owe me anything. I'm doing it because you reminded me that assumptions make you stupid. Because you stood in a restaurant and called me out for being arrogant and dismissive. Because you're proof that talent exists everywhere if you're willing to look beyond your prejudices. He smiled slightly. And because good business means recognizing assets when you find them. You're an asset, Layla. I'm just smart enough to recognize it. Layla signed the contract with shaking hands. Her life had just changed completely. 3 days ago, she'd been serving overpriced French food to people who didn't see her. Now she had a career, a purpose, and the chance to help others who'd struggled the way she had. Thank you, she said quietly, for seeing me, for the opportunity, for letting me be both things instead of choosing. Both things? American and Arab, Western and Middle Eastern. I've spent my whole life trying to be one or the other because being both felt impossible. You're letting me be complicated. That matters. You're not complicated. You're complete. There's a difference. Rashid stood, offering his hand. Welcome to the team, Miss Hassan. Let's bridge some cultures and confuse some stereotypes. That's the best job description I've ever heard. As Layla left the hotel, her contract signed and her new life beginning, she pulled out her phone and called her mother. Mama, I have news. Remember how you always said Baba wanted me to honor our heritage and my education? I think I finally figured out how to do both. And for the first time in years, Layla Hassan felt whole. 3 months into her new position, Layla had accompanied Rashid to 7 countries, negotiated deals worth over $2 billion, and learned that working closely with someone inevitably complicated professional boundaries. The complication wasn't that Rashid was inappropriate. He'd been scrupulously professional, never crossing lines, treating her with consistent respect. The complication was that Layla was developing feelings she absolutely should not have for her employer. It started small. Noticing how Rashid listened when she spoke, genuinely considered her input, changed his mind when her arguments were better than his, appreciating how he defended her authority in meetings with investors who tried to dismiss her, admiring how he balanced traditional values with genuine respect for women's capabilities. And then there were moments that felt less professional and more personal, like when they'd worked until 2 a.m. preparing for a crucial negotiation, and Rashid had ordered her favorite Lebanese food without asking, just remembering her mentioning it weeks ago. Or when she'd been sick and he'd rearranged his entire schedule so she could rest. Or the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention, like she was more than just a valuable employee, but acting on those feelings would be disastrous. Layla had finally found work that used her skills and paid her appropriately. She wasn't risking that for attraction that might be nothing more than proximity and mutual respect. The 4th month brought a new challenge. Rashid's family. My mother is coming to New York, Rashid announced during their morning coffee meeting. She wants to meet you. Layla nearly choked on her coffee. Why does your mother want to meet me? Because I've mentioned you. Frequently. In terms that apparently made her curious. Rashid looked uncomfortable. She's very traditional. She'll have opinions about you, your role, probably your clothing and your heritage. I apologize in advance. What kind of opinions? She'll think you're too Western, too independent, too unchaperoned around me. She'll probably suggest I hire a male advisor instead, or at least ensure we're never alone together. Rashid ran a hand through his hair. My mother loves me. But she has very specific ideas about propriety and gender roles. Should I be worried? Probably. But Layla, you should know. Whatever she says, it doesn't change anything. You're excellent at your job. My mother's opinions don't affect your position here. But when Sheikh Fatima al-Mazrui arrived with an entourage of female relatives and attendants, Layla understood that Rashid's mother's opinions affected everything, whether he acknowledged it or not. The meeting was arranged at Rashid's hotel suite, with Layla arriving in her most conservative abaya and hijab. Sheikh Fatima was in her 60s, elegant and intimidating, with eyes that assessed Layla with surgical precision. So you're the American girl my son talks about constantly, Fatima said in Arabic after the formal greetings. Her tone was pleasant, but her words were pointed. I'm his cultural advisor, yes. It's a pleasure to meet you, Sheikh Fatima. Cultural advisor. Such a modern title. Fatima sipped her tea. In my day, we called them companions. Though those relationships were more honestly named, at least, Layla felt her stomach drop. I assure you, Sheikha, my relationship with your son is completely professional. Of course it is. I'm sure you're very professional about spending hours alone with him, traveling together, advising him in private. Very professional indeed. Mama, Rashid said sharply. That's enough. Layla is my employee. Nothing more. Nothing more now, perhaps. But Rashid, you're 36 years old, unmarried, spending your time with a woman who, while clearly intelligent, is not suitable for a man of your position. Not suitable? Layla's voice was carefully controlled. Because I'm American? Or because I work for a living? Because you're caught between worlds. Neither fully Arab nor fully American. My son needs a wife who understands our culture completely, who can navigate our society without causing scandal. Sheikha Fatima, with respect, I understand Arab culture perfectly well. I speak 4 dialects of Arabic. I've studied Middle Eastern politics and history for years. Just because I was born in America doesn't mean I'm ignorant of my heritage. Heritage is more than language and education. It's about knowing your place, understanding duty, accepting that some roles are for men and some for women. And cultural advising is for women, apparently, since I'm doing it successfully. Layla kept her voice level. I understand you're concerned about your son, but he hired me because I'm good at my job, not because of anything else. After Fatima and her entourage left, Rashid poured himself a generous whiskey. I'm sorry. She was worse than I expected. She thinks we're sleeping together. She thinks any man and woman working closely together must be sleeping together. That's her worldview. Rashid downed the whiskey. It doesn't matter what she thinks. You're staying. Your job is secure, is it? Because if your family is scandalized by my presence, my family doesn't run my business. I do. Rashid's voice was firm. Layla, I'm not letting my mother's traditional views cost me the best cultural advisor I've ever had. You're staying. But over the next 2 weeks, the pressure increased. Rashid's mother stayed in New York, inserting herself into their schedule, bringing female relatives to chaperone their meetings, making pointed comments about propriety and scandal. Other investors started making comments too, asking if Rashid's close relationship with his female advisor was affecting his judgment. This is getting worse. Layla told Rashid after a particularly uncomfortable dinner where 3 different people had made innuendos about their relationship. Your reputation is being damaged because of me. My reputation is fine. These are just people uncomfortable with women in professional roles. Rashid, be honest. Would this be easier if you hired a man instead? Someone who wouldn't raise questions about propriety? Easier. Probably. Better. Absolutely not. Rashid looked at her directly. Layla, I'm not firing you because people have dirty minds. You're excellent at your job. That's what matters. What if it's more than that? The question slipped out before Layla could stop it. More than what? More than just your mother having a dirty mind. What if she's right? What if there is something between us that's complicating things? The silence was heavy. Rashid set down his glass carefully. Is there? Something between us. Layla's heart hammered. This was dangerous territory, but she was tired of pretending, tired of carefully maintaining distance when every instinct wanted to close it. I don't know. Maybe. But it doesn't matter because acting on it would destroy everything we've built. I'd lose credibility. You'd lose respect. We'd prove your mother right about women being distractions rather than colleagues. What if I don't care about proving her wrong? What if I care more about being honest about what I'm feeling? What are you feeling? Rashid stood, walking to the window. That you're brilliant and challenging and you make me want to be better than I am. That I look forward to our coffee meetings more than million-dollar deals. That when you argue with me about contract terms or cultural nuances, I find it more interesting than anything else in my day. That's what I'm feeling, Layla. And it has nothing to do with you being convenient or available. It has everything to do with you being remarkable. Layla couldn't breathe. Rashid, I know. It's a terrible idea. You're my employee. There's a power imbalance. Getting involved would complicate everything and give my mother ammunition. Rashid turned back to face her. But I'm tired of pretending I don't feel it. Tired of carefully maintaining distance when all I want is to be closer. If we do this, we can't hide it. Your mother, your family, the investors, everyone will have opinions. Some will say I slept my way into this job. Others will say you're being manipulated by an American woman. There's no scenario where this is easy. Has anything worthwhile in your life been easy? No, but I've also never risked something this important before. Rashid crossed the room, stopping just in front of her. I'm not asking you to risk your job. If you don't feel the same way, we continue as we are. Professional, respectful, no awkwardness. But Layla, if there's any part of you that wants this too, that thinks maybe we could figure out how to make it work, I need to know. Layla looked at him. At the vulnerability in his expression, at the hope mixed with fear, she thought about all the reasons to say no, the professional complications, the family drama, the risk of losing everything she'd built. Then she thought about the last 4 months, working beside someone who respected her intelligence, being challenged and appreciated, feeling seen completely, not as American or Arab, but as both, as whole. Finding someone who didn't need her to be smaller or simpler to be comfortable. I want this, she said quietly. I'm terrified of what it means, but I want this. Rashid kissed her with a gentleness that surprised her, like she was something precious, not something won. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. We're going to face backlash, from my family, from conservative investors, from people who think women shouldn't have power in business. Are you ready for that? I've been facing backlash my whole life for existing as both things. At least now I have someone facing it with me. Then we do this properly. I'll talk to my mother. Explain that you're not a distraction or a scandal, but someone I genuinely care about. We'll be open about our relationship. Make it impossible for people to whisper that you're secretly inappropriate. And we'll set clear professional boundaries so your work credibility is never questioned. What kind of boundaries? In business meetings, you're my advisor first. Your professional opinion takes precedence over personal feelings. We don't let relationship issues affect negotiations. And if you ever feel I'm undermining your authority or treating you differently because we're together, you call me out immediately. I call you out anyway. It's kind of my job, I know. It's one of many reasons I love you. The words hung in the air. Layla's breath caught. You love me? I'm fairly certain I started falling in love with you when you corrected my Arabic in the middle of a restaurant and called me out for being arrogant. Everything since then has just been confirming what I already knew. Rashid cupped her face. You make me want to be better, smarter, more respectful, more aware of my privilege and my prejudices. That's love, Layla, not just attraction. Love. I think I love you too. Even though you're arrogant and occasionally insufferable and your mother hates me, my mother doesn't hate you. She's threatened by you. There's a difference. That's not better. No, but it's honest. Rashid kissed her again. We'll figure it out, together. But Layla, I need you to promise me something. If this gets too hard, if the backlash threatens your career or your well-being, you tell me. We don't suffer in silence trying to prove we can handle it. I promise. But Rashid, you have to promise too. If your family makes this impossible, if choosing me means losing them, you tell me. I won't be the reason you're estranged from your family. They'll adjust, eventually, and if they don't, that's their choice. Not yours. But Layla knew it wouldn't be that simple. Fatima had made clear that she saw Layla as inappropriate, as a Western distraction leading Rashid away from tradition. Other family members would likely agree, and in Arab culture, family opinions carried weight that Americans didn't always understand. They were choosing a hard path. But looking at Rashid, feeling the certainty of his hand in hers, Layla decided some hard paths were worth walking. Bulim 5 toplam kelime sayısı. Tam 2,000 kelime. The backlash was immediate and brutal. When Rashid formally announced their relationship to his family and business partners, the response ranged from disappointment to outright hostility. His mother stopped speaking to him for 2 weeks. His uncle, a major investor in Al-Mazrui Energy, threatened to pull his funding. 3 conservative business partners from Saudi Arabia canceled meetings, citing concerns about propriety and judgment. And the rumors started. Layla had seduced Rashid for his money. She was manipulating him away from his culture. She was a Western woman corrupting a good Arab man. The whispers followed them into every meeting, every negotiation, every business dinner. This is exactly what I was afraid of, Layla said, after a particularly hostile encounter where a Kuwaiti investor had openly questioned her presence. I'm damaging your business relationships. You're not damaging anything. Small-minded people are revealing themselves. Rashid pulled her close. They were in his hotel suite after another exhausting day of dealing with judgment and innuendo. Layla, I knew this would be hard. But I also know you're worth it. What if your mother never accepts me? What if choosing me means losing your family? Then I lose my family. But I'm not losing you. The statement was firm, but Layla heard the pain underneath. Rashid loved his mother despite her traditionalism. Being estranged from her was costing him, even if he wouldn't admit it. We need to try harder, Layla said, to make your mother understand, to bridge the gap instead of letting it widen. Layla, you can't bridge a gap when the other person refuses to meet you halfway. My mother sees you as a threat to tradition. Nothing you do will change that. Maybe, but I have to try. Because I love you, and you love her, and I won't be the reason that relationship is destroyed. 2 days later, Layla showed up at Sheikh Fatima's hotel suite without Rashid, wearing her most traditional abaya and carrying a tray of Arabic sweets she'd spent all morning preparing. Fatima's attendants looked shocked, but let her in after checking with their employer. Fatima sat in the main room, surrounded by female relatives, looking regal and intimidating. When she saw Layla, her expression hardened. What are you doing here? I'm here to talk, woman to woman. Not as Rashid's employee or girlfriend, but as someone who needs you to understand something important. Layla set down the sweets, traditional Lebanese pastries her grandmother had taught her to make. Please, 5 minutes of your time. Fatima studied her for a long moment, then gestured to her relatives. Leave us. After they were alone, Fatima poured tea with deliberate ceremony. You made these sweets yourself? Yes, my grandmother's recipes. She was from Beirut, married to my grandfather from the mountains. She taught me that food is how we show love in our culture. And you're showing love by bribing me with sweets? I'm showing respect by offering you something I made with my own hands. By coming here alone, without Rashid's knowledge, to speak honestly, Layla accepted the tea. Sheikh Fatima, I understand why you don't trust me. You think I'm taking your son away from his culture, from his family, from everything you raised him to value. But I'm not here to take anything away. I'm here because I love him, and that means loving all of him, including his heritage, his family, his faith. You're American. You can't understand what it means to be truly Arab, to carry those responsibilities. I'm half Lebanese. I speak Arabic fluently. I've studied our history, our culture, our traditions. Just because I was born in America doesn't mean I'm not Arab. I'm both things, Sheikha. American and Arab. Western and Middle Eastern. I'm not choosing between them. I'm being both. That's impossible. You serve either one culture or the other. You can't be both without betraying one? Why not? Why can't I honor my father's Lebanese heritage and my mother's American background? Why can't I wear hijab when it feels right and go without when it doesn't? Why can't I be complicated instead of simple? Layla leaned forward. Sheikha, with respect, the world is changing. Arab women are becoming engineers, doctors, business leaders. We're not abandoning our culture. We're expanding what it means to be Arab. Your son understands that. He hired me not despite being Arab American, but because of it. Because I can bridge 2 worlds he needs to navigate. And you think being his girlfriend won't compromise your professional judgment? That mixing business and romance is wise? I think Rashid is brilliant enough to separate professional advice from personal feelings. I think I'm strong enough to call him out when he's wrong, even when we're together. And I think our relationship makes us both better. Better at our work. Better at understanding different perspectives. Better at being complete people instead of just cultural stereotypes. Fatima sipped her tea in silence. You're very articulate, very Western in your arguments. I'm educated. That's not the same as Western. Arab women have been scholars, poets, leaders for centuries. I'm just continuing that tradition, while dating my son and working in his company, creating scandal. With respect, Sheikha, the only scandal is that people think a woman can't be both competent and in a relationship. That we have to choose between professional success and personal happiness. That's not tradition. That's sexism disguised as culture. Fatima set down her cup with a sharp click. You're very bold. Rashid always did prefer women who challenged him. I'm honest. There's a difference. Sheikha Fatima, I'm not asking you to love me. I'm asking you to give me a chance. To see that I respect your son, his culture, his family. To understand that I'm not taking him away. I'm standing beside him as he builds something meaningful. And if I refuse, if I continue opposing this relationship, then you'll damage your relationship with your son. Because Rashid has made his choice. He's choosing me. The question is whether you'll lose him entirely by refusing to accept that choice, or whether you'll find a way to be part of his life even if it looks different than you planned. The silence stretched long. Finally, Fatima spoke in Arabic, her tone formal but not hostile. You're right that the world is changing. I don't always like those changes, but I love my son more than I love tradition. If he's chosen you, then you must have qualities I haven't seen yet. I'm willing to look more closely. But Layla, understand this. If you hurt him, if you take advantage of his feelings, if you use him for his money or influence, I will destroy you. Mother to possible future daughter-in-law, I will make your life impossible. Do we understand each other? Completely. And Sheikh, I promise you this. I love your son for who he is, not what he has. I challenge him to be better, not easier. I respect his culture while being honest about my own. That's all I can offer, but it's genuine. We'll see. Time reveals truth. Fatima gestured to the sweets. These are good. Your grandmother taught you well. Perhaps she can teach you other things too. Traditional things that might make you less American. It wasn't acceptance, but it was a start. When Layla told Rashid about the meeting, his expression shifted from shock to something like pride. You went to my mother alone, without backup? Are you insane? Possibly, but Rashid, she's your mother. I had to try. And I think, maybe, she's willing to consider that I'm not the enemy. What did you say to her? That I'm both things, Arab and American. That being complicated isn't betraying anyone. That loving you means respecting your heritage, your family, all of it. Layla took his hands. She threatened to destroy me if I hurt you, which I'm taking as a good sign. That's my mother's version of approval. Conditional threats. Rashid pulled her close. Thank you. For trying. For being brave enough to face her alone. For refusing to make me choose between the woman I love and my family. I'm not making you choose. But Rashid, you need to understand something. I can bridge cultures and business, but I can't change who I am. I'll always be both things. If your family needs me to be only Arab, only traditional, only what they expect, I'll fail. I can be respectful, but I can't be someone I'm not. I don't want you to be anyone but yourself. Complicated, brilliant, challenging, completely yourself. Over the next month, Fatima slowly, grudgingly, began including Layla in family gatherings. She corrected Layla's Arabic pronunciation with the authority of a teacher. She suggested traditional clothing that was more appropriate. She introduced Layla to relatives with the qualifier Rashid's American friend instead of girlfriend. It was exhausting and occasionally insulting, but it was also progress. The real test came when Rashid had to return to Dubai for a family wedding. His cousin was getting married in a massive traditional ceremony, and Rashid's attendance was expected. Come with me, he said to Layla, as my official girlfriend. Let my family see us together in our world, not theirs. Rashid, that's asking for trouble. A huge family wedding where I'll be the only American? Where everyone will be judging us. Where everyone will see that we're serious. That this isn't just a Western fling, but a real relationship. Layla, I need you there. But I'll understand if it's too much. Layla thought about it. About facing an entire extended family that probably shared Fatima's reservations. About being surrounded by tradition and expectations and judgment. About being visibly, undeniably, both American and Arab in a setting where that complexity would be tested. I'll go, but I'm bringing my own hijab, the one my grandmother gave me. I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not, even for your family. I wouldn't want you to. Dubai was overwhelming. The wedding was 3 days of events, henna parties, traditional ceremonies, massive feasts. Layla wore her grandmother's hijab, traditional Lebanese clothing mixed with modern touches, refusing to completely conform or completely rebel. Rashid's family watched her with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. His female cousins interrogated her about her intentions. His uncles asked pointed questions about her background. His mother's friends made comments in Arabic that they assumed she wouldn't understand. But Layla navigated it all with the same skills she used in business negotiations. She answered questions honestly. She participated in traditions while explaining which ones were new to her. She spoke Arabic fluently, but admitted when she didn't know cultural nuances. She was herself, complicated, genuine, refusing to be simple. On the third day, during the main wedding ceremony, Rashid's grandmother, a tiny, fierce woman in her 80s, summoned Layla for a private conversation. You're the American girl my grandson loves. she said in classical Arabic. I'm the American Lebanese woman your grandson loves. Yes. And you make him happy? I challenge him. I support him. I make him think about his assumptions. Whether that makes him happy, you'd have to ask him. The grandmother laughed, a sound like dried leaves rustling. Good. Rashid needs someone who doesn't worship him. Too much money makes men stupid. You keep him smart. That's good for the family. Even though I'm American. Even though you're American. Because you're also Lebanese. Because you speak our language and respect our traditions even when they're uncomfortable. Because you came to my grandson's family wedding knowing you'd be judged and came anyway. That's courage. That's what our family needs. The approval from Rashid's grandmother seemed to shift something. Other family members became more welcoming. Fatima stopped qualifying Layla as American friend and started introducing her as Rashid's companion. It wasn't perfect acceptance, but it was recognition. On the flight back to New York, Layla leaned against Rashid's shoulder, exhausted and relieved. Your family is intense. They liked you. My grandmother's approval is basically a blessing. Everyone else will fall in line. Your mother still thinks I'm too Western. My mother thinks everyone is too Western except her. Don't take it personally. Rashid kissed her forehead. Thank you for coming. For being willing to be judged and questioned and still showing up. That meant everything. I did it because I love you. And because family matters, even when they're difficult. Speaking of family and difficult topics, I have a question. Rashid shifted to face her. If we're doing this, building a real future together, we need to talk about what that looks like. Marriage, children, where we live, how we navigate two cultures for the rest of our lives. Are you ready for those conversations? Layla's heart hammered. They'd been together 6 months. Moving to marriage talk felt fast, but looking at Rashid, she realized it also felt right. I'm ready. But Rashid, we need to be honest about the challenges. Your family will have opinions about how we raise children, about religion, language, traditions. We'll face judgment from both sides. Arabs who think I'm too American, Americans who think I'm too Arab. Are you ready for that complexity? I'm ready for everything if it means building a life with you. Then let's have those conversations. All of them. The easy ones and the hard ones and the impossible ones. Because I love you. And that means figuring out how to make this work, even when it's complicated. Especially when it's complicated. That's when it matters most. 1 year after Layla had responded in fluent Arabic to Rashid's dismissive comments in a Manhattan restaurant, they stood in that same restaurant for a very different reason. Rashid had rented the entire space for the evening. Both their families were there, Layla's mother and extended Lebanese relatives, Rashid's mother and what seemed like half of Dubai's elite. The two groups eyed each other with cautious curiosity, separated by language, culture, and a year of complicated negotiations about what this union would mean. This is either the best idea we've ever had or the worst, Layla whispered to Rashid as they greeted guests. It's both. That's kind of our specialty. He squeezed her hand. Are you ready for this? To announce our engagement to a room full of people who have opinions about every aspect of our relationship. Not even a little bit. But when Rashid stood to address the room, switching effortlessly between Arabic and English so everyone could understand, Layla felt something settle in her chest. This was right. Complicated, challenging, sometimes exhausting, but right. Thank you all for coming, Rashid began. A year ago, I sat at that table, he pointed to table 7, and made assumptions about my waitress based on her appearance and profession. I spoke in Arabic, thinking no one would understand. And then Layla responded in perfect Arabic, called me out for being arrogant, and changed my life completely. Laughter rippled through the room. Even Fatima smiled slightly, though she'd probably never fully forgive the story of how they met. Tonight, I'm asking all of you to celebrate what Layla and I have built. Not just a relationship, but a bridge between cultures. A way of being both things, Arab and American, traditional and modern, respectful of heritage while building something new. Layla has taught me that being complicated isn't a weakness, it's a strength, and I'm honored that she's agreed to marry me and continue building that complexity together. Rashid switched to Arabic for the traditional engagement announcement, then back to English. Layla watched her mother crying happily, Rashid's mother looking proud despite her reservations, both families trying to find common ground across vast cultural differences. After the formal announcement, the evening dissolved into celebration. Arab musicians played alongside a jazz quartet. Traditional mezzi sat beside American appetizers. Guests mixed awkwardly at first, then gradually found connections through shared humanity, if not shared language. Layla's mother cornered her near the dessert table. "Habibti, are you sure about this?" "Rashid is wonderful, but his world is so different from ours. So much wealth, so much expectation, so much tradition. Mama, I'm sure. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, we'll face challenges. But Rashid lets me be both things. Arab and American. Traditional and modern. I don't have to choose. That's rare. Your father would have loved him. Would have loved that you're honoring your heritage while staying true to yourself." Her mother's eyes welled. "I just worry that you'll lose yourself trying to be what everyone else needs." "I won't. Because Rashid doesn't need me to be anything except myself. That's the whole point." Across the room, Rashid was having a similar conversation with his mother. Layla couldn't hear the words, but she saw Fatima's stern expression softening as Rashid spoke. Finally, Fatima nodded, kissed her son's cheek, and approached Layla. "A moment," Fatima asked in Arabic. They stepped onto the restaurant's patio away from the crowd. Fatima looked out at the Manhattan skyline, her expression thoughtful. "I've been unfair to you," she said finally. "Not because you're American. Because you represent change I'm not comfortable with. Arab women being bold, being powerful, choosing their own paths. It threatens everything I was taught about how women should be. Sheikh Fatima, let me finish. You've been patient with me, respectful even when I didn't deserve it. You've learned our traditions while maintaining your own identity. And you make my son happy in ways I've never seen. That matters more than my comfort with change." Fatima pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was an intricate gold bracelet, clearly antique and valuable. This belonged to Rashid's grandmother. "She wore it on her wedding day, as did I. I want you to have it. To wear when you marry my son. To pass to your daughter someday, inshallah." Layla's throat tightened. "Sheikha, this is too much. It's tradition." "You're joining our family. That means you carry our history forward, just as you carry your own family's history. The bracelet represents that connection, that you're not erasing one heritage for another, but braiding them together. Thank you. This means more than you know. I know exactly what it means. It means I'm accepting that my son's future looks different than I planned, that our family is expanding in unexpected ways. That tradition evolves." Fatima's smile was slight but genuine. "Now, shall we go back inside before your mother thinks I'm lecturing you about proper behavior?" "She probably already thinks that. Good. Let her think I'm difficult. It builds character." The next 6 months were a blur of planning. They decided on 2 ceremonies. A traditional Islamic wedding in Dubai for Rashid's family, followed by a more casual celebration in New York for Layla's American relatives and friends. It meant navigating 2 sets of expectations, 2 cultural frameworks, 2 completely different concepts of what a wedding should be. "This is exhausting," Layla said during a particularly frustrating planning session where Rashid's aunts wanted full traditional segregation and Layla's mother wanted everyone together. "Why are we doing this to ourselves?" "Because both families deserve to celebrate in ways that feel meaningful to them. Because showing respect for different traditions matters. Because our whole relationship is about bridging differences." Rashid pulled her close. "And because after the weddings are over, we get to just be married. That's worth the exhausting planning." The Dubai wedding was magnificent and overwhelming. 300 guests, elaborate traditional ceremonies, gender-segregated celebrations that Layla found both beautiful and frustrating. She wore traditional Emirati wedding attire, layers of gold and intricate embroidery, and felt simultaneously honored and constrained. But watching Rashid's face when he saw her, seeing his mother's pride, feeling his grandmother's whispered blessing, Layla understood why this mattered. This ceremony wasn't just about her and Rashid. It was about their families witnessing their union, about respecting traditions that had meaning even when they were uncomfortable. The New York celebration 2 weeks later was completely different. Casual, mixed gender, with speeches that made everyone laugh and cry. Layla wore a simple white dress, no hijab, her natural curls loose. She looked like herself, complicated, bridging cultures, refusing to be only one thing. "You're beautiful in both," Rashid whispered during their first dance. "Traditional and modern. Arab and American. Completely yourself in every version. I'm the same person, just wearing different costumes. No, you're showing different facets of who you are. That's not costume. That's completeness." They honeymooned in Lebanon, visiting her father's family, walking the streets of Beirut, connecting with the heritage Layla had often hidden. Rashid learned phrases in Lebanese Arabic, tasted foods he'd never tried, understood her complexity in new ways. "This is where your directness comes from," he said, laughing after her uncle had loudly criticized the government during dinner. "Lebanese people don't do subtle, we do honest." "There's a difference. I'm learning that difference. Slowly. With frequent corrections from my brilliant wife." Back in New York, they settled into married life that was both ordinary and extraordinary. Layla continued working as Rashid's senior cultural advisor, now with added credibility as his wife. They navigated family visits from both sides, each one requiring different cultural performances. They argued about how to decorate their apartment, how to spend holidays, how to balance competing family expectations, and they talked about the future, about children who would carry both heritages, about how to raise kids who were comfortable being complicated, about the responsibility of bridging cultures for the next generation. "What if we mess it up?" Layla asked one night. "What if our kids feel torn instead of complete? What if trying to be both things just makes them feel like neither?" "Then we teach them what you taught me. That being complicated isn't being torn. That carrying multiple heritages isn't confusion. That they get to choose how to integrate their identities instead of having others choose for them." Rashid put his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our kids will be Arab and American. Muslim and raised in the West, traditional and modern. That's not mess. That's richness. Your mother is going to have so many opinions about how we raise them. Undoubtedly. We'll listen respectfully and then do what we think is right. That's marriage to a traditional Arab family. Respectful disagreement as a lifestyle." 6 months after their weddings, Layla stood in front of 500 Arab American university students at a conference on cultural identity. Rashid sat in the front row, watching with pride as his wife addressed the crowd. "I'm here to talk about being both," Layla began. "Arab and American, traditional and modern, religious and secular, professional and personal. All the contradictions we're told we have to resolve by choosing one side or the other. I'm here to tell you that choosing is optional. You can be complicated. You can integrate instead of segregate. You can honor multiple heritages without betraying any of them." She talked about hiding her Arabic skills, about serving tables with a graduate degree, about the moment she chose to stop hiding and claim all of herself, about finding a partner who celebrated her complexity instead of asking her to simplify. Some of you will face family who wants you to be more traditional. Others will face a society that wants you to be less Arab. You'll be told you're too American for your relatives and too foreign for your classmates. You'll be asked where you're really from, what you really believe, who you really are. And here's what I want you to know. You get to answer those questions for yourselves. You don't owe anyone simplicity. You don't owe anyone easy categorization. You can be gloriously, defiantly, beautifully complicated. The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Students lined up afterward to share their own stories of being caught between cultures, of hiding parts of themselves, of struggling to integrate identities that seemed incompatible. One young woman, wearing hijab and MIT sweatshirt, asked, "How do you balance it all? How do you be both without losing yourself?" "Honestly, some days I don't balance it. Some days I'm more American. Some days I'm more Arab. Some days I wear hijab. Some days I don't. The key is giving yourself permission to be fluid instead of fixed, to let your identity breathe instead of forcing it into rigid categories." But doesn't that confuse people? Doesn't it make them not trust you? Sometimes. But the people who matter, the people who actually love you, they adjust. They learn that complexity isn't instability. It's authenticity. My husband learned that. My family is learning it. And you know what? The people who can't handle my complexity aren't people I need in my life anyway. Afterward, Rashid drove them home through Manhattan traffic. "You were incredible." Those students will remember that speech for years. I just told them what I wish someone had told me at their age. That being complicated is okay. That you don't have to choose. You didn't just tell them. You showed them, by being successful and happy and completely yourself, by refusing to simplify even when it would be easier. That matters, Layla. You're changing what's possible for Arab American kids. 6 months later, Layla found out she was pregnant. They told their families over video calls. Rashid's family in Dubai, Layla's mother in Boston. Everyone offering advice and opinions about how to raise this bicultural child. "They're already planning our baby's life," Layla said, laughing and crying simultaneously. Your mother wants Islamic education. My mother wants American schools. Your aunts have opinions about names. Everyone has opinions, and we'll listen to approximately none of them while claiming we're considering everything. That's parenthood in a bicultural family. Rashid put his hand on her stomach. Our kid is going to be so complicated. Arab American, Muslim and Western, traditional and modern, speaking multiple languages, navigating multiple cultures, probably deeply confused about identity for at least 18 years, or confident in being multiple things, or comfortable with complexity, or teaching us what we don't know about integration. That too. Either way, they'll be ours. Beautifully, impossibly, wonderfully ours. As Layla fell asleep that night, Rashid's hand on her stomach, she thought about the journey. From hiding her Arabic skills to using them professionally, from serving tables to advising billion-dollar deals, from fragmenting her identity to claiming all of it. From the moment Rashid had made assumptions to this moment where they were building a family that would bridge cultures permanently. It hadn't been easy. There had been judgment, backlash, family drama, professional complications. But looking at her life, at meaningful work, genuine partnership, cultural bridges built daily, Layla knew she'd made the right choice. The choice to stop hiding. The choice to be complicated. The choice to answer, where are you really from? With I'm from both, and that's enough. Some questions didn't need simple answers. Some identities didn't need categorization. Some people were meant to be bridges, living between worlds, proving that complicated wasn't broken, it was just complete.